Rowan Ashford's heart didn't just break on the polished hardwood of the Silver Hollow Pack Hall. It shattered, publicly, in front of 400 witnesses who had waited 3 years to watch her fall. She was 21 years old, still wolfless, and the alpha who had promised to wait for her was about to choose someone else. The midnight blue dress had been a gift from Aunt Margot 3 weeks ago. Silk, elegant, expensive. A beautiful lie wrapped around Rowan's fragile frame as she stood at the edge of the massive rustic hall watching her world end in real time. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the celebration. Long tables overflowed with roasted meats and wine that cost more than Rowan had ever owned. Hundreds of pack members filled the space in their finest clothes, laughing and drinking, celebrating the ancient mating rituals that would bind them together. But Rowan's eyes saw only him. Kieran Blackwood stood on the raised platform at the far end of the hall, 23 years old and built like the ancient oaks surrounding their Oregon territory. Steel gray eyes, dark hair perfectly styled. Every inch the alpha he'd become when his father stepped down a year ago. 3 years. That's how long Rowan had waited for him. 3 years since the mate bond had sparked between them at her 18th birthday celebration. 3 years since he'd pulled her into the shadows and whispered the words that became her gospel. Wait for your wolf, Rowan. I'll wait for you. But Kieran wasn't looking at her now. He was looking at Dahlia Crane. She wore crimson, a dress that screamed power and confidence in everything Rowan wasn't. Dahlia pressed herself against Kieran's arm, her auburn hair catching the chandelier light, her hand splayed possessively across his chest. Don't look. Aunt Margot's voice was gentle as she gripped Rowan's elbow. He's playing politics. An alpha has to keep his beta happy. But the way Kieran's hand covered Dahlia's didn't look like politics. It looked like choice. The sharp crystal sound of glass being tapped silenced the hall. Every conversation died. Kieran had stepped it up to the microphone, the pack shaman beside him, ready to bless whatever came next. Welcome, my pack. His voice rolled through the space like thunder vibrating in Rowan's bones. Tonight, under the full moon, we celebrate the strength of our bonds. We celebrate the future of Silver Hollow. His gray eyes swept the crowd and found Rowan for one heart-stopping second. This was it. He would explain. He would call her forward. A pack is only as strong as its leadership. Kieran continued, his gaze moving past her like she was invisible. And an alpha is only as strong as his Luna. We need stability. We need power. We need a Luna who embodies the fierce, unyielding spirit of the wolf. Rowan's stomach dropped. Dahlia Crane, come forward. The applause crashed over her like a tidal wave. Dahlia ascended the platform steps, her smile triumphant and cruel. She took Kieran's hand, turning to face the cheering pack, while Rowan stood frozen, unable to breathe. Kieran raised his hand. The applause died. When he spoke again, his voice had gone cold. Before the shaman binds us, there is pack business to conclude. A matter of the goddess's will and the alpha's right to choose. His eyes locked onto Rowan. The crowd followed his gaze. Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned toward her, whispers erupting like wildfire. Rowan Ashford, step forward. The command slammed into her with physical force. Alpha compulsion. Impossible to resist. Her legs moved against her will. The crowd parted, leaving a wide aisle of staring faces. She felt her best friend Jude try to grab her arm, heard Aunt Margot's sharp gasp, but her body obeyed the order. Her heels clicked against hardwood. Each step echoed in the terrible silence. When she reached the platform's base, she looked up at the man she loved. Kieran. His name broke on her lips. Please, what are you doing? He didn't flinch. The moon goddess pairs souls to balance one another. 3 years ago, a bond sparked between myself and Rowan Ashford. But the goddess also gives us free will, the responsibility to protect our people above our own desires. Gasps rippled through the hall. The rumors confirmed, the secret exposed. I have waited 3 years for her wolf to awaken, for her to prove herself worthy of standing beside me. But she remains broken, human, weak. Each word was a lash. Rowan gasped, wrapping her arms around her stomach. You promised, she choked out. You said you would wait. I waited long enough. Kieran's voice cracked like a whip. Silver Hollow cannot be led by weakness. A true alpha does not let a mistake of fate destroy his pack. He stepped to the platform's edge, looking down at her. The bond between them pulled tight, too tight, choking. I, Kieran Blackwood Alpha of the Silver Hollow Pack, do hereby reject you, Rowan Ashford, as my destined mate and Luna. The pain was instant and absolute. Her chest ripped open. Someone reached inside her ribcage and tore out her heart. The bond didn't just break, it shattered every fragment, turning to glass and grinding into her organs. Rowan screamed. The sound was inhuman, raw, guttural. It echoed off vaulted ceilings and silenced every whisper. Her knees hit hardwood with a crack she barely felt through the agony. She collapsed, curling into a ball, hands clawing at her chest, trying to hold together pieces that no longer fit. She couldn't breathe. Her heart stuttered. Missed beats struggled to pump blood through a body that wanted to die. Rowan, Jude's voice cut through the darkness, but Alpha guards blocked his path. It is done, Kieran announced, emotionless. The weak bond is severed. Shaman, proceed with the claiming ceremony for my chosen Luna. He was going to mark Dahlia, right now, while Rowan lay dying at his feet. Look at the pathetic runt. Dahlia's mockery dripped like poison. Can't even take a rejection like a real wolf. Someone drag her out before she ruins my ceremony. Rowan's vision darkened. Her consciousness slipped away, pulled down into a void, promising peace and end to pain. Her heartbeat faded to a faint flutter. Let go, a small voice whispered. Just let go. Above her, Kieran leaned toward Dahlia, his fangs elongated, ready to pierce her neck and seal the mating bond. Shaman Moira began chanting ancient words. But as the darkness rushed in to claim Rowan, something deep inside her woke up. Not gentle, not a whisper, an explosion. Heat detonated in her core, white-hot, blinding, furious heat that incinerated the cold void. It shot through her veins like magma, burning away despair, and replacing it with something ancient, terrifying, and absolutely enraged. Her heart, which had been dying, suddenly slammed against her ribs like a war drum. Thump, thump, thump. Then she heard another voice, not Kieran's, not her own. This voice sounded like grinding stone in winter storms in the fury of the earth itself. Distinctly female, impossibly old, absolutely murderous. Mine. The word resonated through every cell in Rowan's body. He dared to break what was ours. He dared to call us weak. Rise. Another scream tore from Rowan's throat, but this time it wasn't human. It was a roar that vibrated crystal chandeliers and rattled windows. On the platform, Kieran froze. His fangs were inches from Dahlia's neck. Shaman Moira stopped chanting. The entire hall went silent. Rowan's spine arched violently, lifting her torso off the floor. Bones broke and reshaped with sounds like gunshots. Pop, crack, snap. Her skeleton restructured itself, expanding, transforming. It should have been agony, but the fire inside turned pain into fuel. Every crack of bone felt like liberation. What is happening? Dahlia shrieked, stumbling backward. Get her out! Seize her, Kieran shouted. Fear flashed in his eyes. Get the runt out! Two massive Alpha guards rushed forward, armed with silver-laced batons. They reached for Rowan's arms. The moment they touched her, a shockwave of kinetic energy exploded outward. The guards flew 10 feet through the air, crashing into refreshment tables. Crystals shattered. Food scattered. Tables collapsed. Screams erupted. Pack members scrambled backwards, shoving each other to escape. Rowan pushed herself onto her hands and knees. The midnight blue dress tore as her body expanded. Her fingernails elongated into curved black claws that gouged grooves into hardwood. Fur erupted from her skin, not brown or gray like silver hollow wolves. This coat was pure silver, so bright it seemed to glow, each hair tipped with shadows dark as liquid night. The transformation was rapid, violent, complete. Within seconds, the fragile human girl was gone. In her place stood something from ancient legend. Rowan's wolf was massive. Where normal wolves stood waist-high to humans, where even alpha wolves were the size of small horses, she was a giant. Her shoulders were level with a grown man's chest. Her paws were the size of dinner plates tipped with claws that could shred steel. She shook out her silver-black coat and lifted her head. The hall went absolutely silent. Rowan opened her eyes. She couldn't see them herself, but she heard the collective gasp of terror. Later, Jude would tell her they weren't gold or amber like typical werewolves. They were glowing amethyst, violet fire burning like twin stars. Power radiated from her, suffocating. It pressed down on every wolf, forcing them to their knees. This wasn't just alpha dominance. This was something older, primal, existing before packs and territories and civilization. This was a lichen, firstborn, royal blood. Pack members began to drop. The elders fell, first aged knees hitting floor as they bared necks in instinctive submission. Then enforcers, then betas and deltas and omegas. Even the alpha guards who tried to grab her were on their knees, whimpering, heads bowed. On the platform, Kieran stood frozen, face pale, jaw slack. He fought his own wolf's instinct to submit, his alpha blood warring against overwhelming compulsion to bow. Beside him, Dahlia had collapsed, completely sobbing, hysterically, crimson dress pooling like blood, as she pressed her face into wood. Rowan let out a low growl. It started deep in her chest and built until crystal chandeliers swung overhead. Wolves pressed hands over ears, but the sound wasn't just audible. It resonated in bones and souls. Let them see, her wolf purred. Let them see what they rejected. Rowan took a slow, deliberate step toward the platform. Hardwood groaned under her weight. The crowd parted like water scrambling over each other. Guards! Kieran's voice cracked with panic. Stop her! None moved. Their wolves wouldn't allow attacking something so fundamentally superior. Rowan climbed the platform steps. Each paw placement was careful, controlled, deadly. She brought her massive head level with Kieran's. He'd pressed himself between her and Dahlia's hands, shaking violently. His eyes shifted halfway to Goldfang's descended, trying desperately to project dominance. It was like trying to stop a hurricane with cardboard. Rowan didn't attack. She simply exhaled. A hot breath carrying the scent of ozone and ancient earth of power predating his bloodline by millennia. She stared into Kieran's terrified eyes and watched the moment he understood what he'd done. He hadn't rejected a late bloomer. He'd publicly humiliated and spiritually severed a royal bloodline, a living goddess from the myths his ancestors worshipped. The broken bond in Rowan's chest gave one last pathetic flutter. Mine, it whispered, a dying echo. Never again, her wolf roared back. Rowan held Kieran's gaze one more second. Then she turned her back on him with a dismissive snort, conveying more contempt than words could. She walked down the center aisle. The crowd remained on their knees, heads bowed, parting in absolute silence. No one dared move. No one dared breathe. When she reached the heavy oak double doors, she didn't bother with handles. One swipe of her massive paw shattered the iron latch. The doors burst open, wood splintering hinges screaming. Cool Oregon night air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and freedom. Rowan leaped into darkness. Her powerful legs devoured ground, each stride carrying her away from the ruined ceremony. The terrified pack the man who'd just made the greatest mistake of his life. She ran. The forest was a blur of green and shadow. For 21 years, Rowan had experienced the world through limited human senses. Now everything was amplified beyond comprehension. She could hear a rabbit's heartbeat 3 miles away, could smell the mineral composition of streams she leaped over, could feel vibrations of every living thing through her paw pads. And the speed. She was flying through ancient Douglas firs, covering ground so fast trees became streaks of darkness. Her silver coat caught moonlight, making her a ghost tearing through the night. The phantom pain of Kieran's rejection still throbbed in her chest, but her wolf had cauterized the wound. The bond that should have killed her had been incinerated by the sheer force of awakening. She hadn't just survived, she'd transcended. But as adrenaline faded, human consciousness crept back. Rowan realized she couldn't stay wolf forever. She had no pack, no territory, no protection, and beneath all this fur, she was entirely naked. She altered trajectory towards Silver Hollow's western edge, toward the contingency plan she and Jude had made a year ago, half joking, when bullying got particularly brutal. If it all goes to hell, Jude had said, meet me at the old Chevron station off Highway 26. It took less than 20 minutes to cover a distance that would have taken an hour by car. She burst through the tree line onto cracked, weed-choked asphalt. There, under a flickering street lamp, sat Jude's beat-up silver Ford F-150, engine running. As Rowan approached, the driver's door opened. Jude stepped out, gripping a tire iron, eyes scanning darkness. He looked exhausted. Bow tie undone, jacket discarded. When he saw what emerged from the forest, his jaw went slack. He didn't see Rowan. He saw a monster. A wolf nearly tall as his chest, radiating an aura, making his Delta wolf whimper and submit. Jude's knees buckled. The tire iron clattered to pavement as he fell, head bowing automatically. He's pack. He's safe, Rowan thought, fighting her wolf's instinct to demand verbal submission. She focused on her human form, on being small, fragile Rowan instead of apex predator. The shift back was easier than expected. Bones compressed, muscles condensed, fur receding into skin. Within seconds, she was human again. She collapsed onto oil-stained concrete, shivering violently, completely naked. Jude was beside her instantly. He had the foresight to bring a heavy flannel jacket from his truck. He wrapped it around her shoulders and helped her to her feet, hands shaking. Rowan, his voice was barely a whisper. What the hell was that? You're not just a wolf, you're something else entirely. He bundled her into the passenger seat, cranking the heater to maximum. He tossed her a lukewarm bottle of blue Gatorade from the center console. Rowan drank desperately. Synthetic sugar tasted like heaven after energy expenditure. Her hands still trembled. I don't know what I am, she rasped. I felt Kieran sever the bond. I was dying, Jude. My heart was stopping. And then she just woke up. Jude threw the truck into drive, peeling out of the pen station and merging onto Highway 26 heading north away from Silver Hollow. You didn't just wake up. You leveled the place. I've never felt power like that. Even the elders were on their knees. He glanced at her knuckles, white on the steering wheel. After you broke through the doors, all hell broke loose. Kieran was screaming you were an aberration, but the shaman tried to finish the ceremony anyway. Kieran grabbed Dahlia, bit his own wrist to draw blood, went to mark her neck. Rowan's stomach clenched. Even with the bond destroyed, the thought stung. "Anne," she whispered. Jude's voice dropped to horrified whisper. The mark didn't take. The moment his blood touched Dahlia's skin, it turned black, started burning her like acid. She was screaming, thrashing. The shaman collapsed. The elders went feral. He took a shuddering breath. They said Kieran rejected lichen blood, that he broke a sacred bond. The moon goddess cursed him. The pack wards dropped the second you left. I could feel them shatter. Rowan stared out the window at dark trees blurring past. Her reflection showed amethyst eyes still holding traces of violet fire. "My parents," she said suddenly. "Jude, what really happened to them? Everyone said border skirmish, but I don't know." His voice was tight. "But whatever you are, they must have been it too. Lichen blood, royal blood, and someone killed them when you were 10. The pieces started connecting. Her parents' mysterious death, her late awakening, the sheer power of her wolf. This wasn't random. This was legacy. "Kieran's going to come after me," she said quietly. "A rejected lichen mate is a walking threat to his authority. If neighboring packs find out he weakens Silver Hollow by rejecting me, they'll destroy him. Which is why we're not stopping until we cross state lines," and Jude pushed the truck faster. "I know someone in Bellingham. We're going dark." The rain started as they crossed into Washington state. Heavy, relentless, turning the highway into a dark river. Rowan watched drops streak across the windshield, her wolf pacing restlessly. She didn't want to run. She wanted to go back and tear out Kieran's throat. But Jude was right. She needed time to understand what she was, time to plan. They stopped at a McDonald's drive-thru near Olympia. The fries were soggy coffee terrible, but Rowan devoured everything. Transformation burned calories like wildfire. By the time they reached Bellingham, the sun threatened the horizon with streaks of gray light. Jude pulled into a run-down Super 8 motel paying cash. The clerk barely looked at them, absorbed in his phone. The room smelled of bleach and old cigarettes. Floral bedspreads had suspicious stains. It wasn't the pack house, but it was a fortress for now. Rowan took a scalding shower, washing away the forest and lingering scent of Silver Hollow. When she emerged wrapped in a scratchy towel, Jude was pacing worn carpet, peering through blackout curtains. "Something's wrong," he muttered. "My wolf is screaming. We shouldn't have stopped. Jude, we've been driving for 7 hours. They could have trackers, professional ones. Rowan, you're lichen. Your scent isn't normal. If Kieran brought in the right people." The motel room door exploded inward. Heavy wood splintered the deadbolt, tearing from the frame with a violent crunch. Rowan screamed, dropping low as 4 massive men poured into the room. They wore black tactical gear, carried silver-laced batons, weapons designed to subdue, not kill. Leading them was a man Rowan recognized immediately, Beta Von Crane, Dahlia's father. He looked exhausted, expensive suit rumpled, but his eyes burned with desperate fury. "You really thought a Delta and a freak could outrun a sanctioned alpha hunt?" Vaughn snarled, kicking a chair aside. "Grab the boy. Silver cuffs on the girl. Alpha Kieran wants her back alive for tribunal." "Tribunal?" Rowan's voice came out steady despite fear coursing through her. Her eyes flashed violet. "He rejected me. I owe him nothing." "You broke our pack," Vaughn roared, lunging forward. "My daughter is scarred for life because of your cursed blood. You're coming back to restore the wards, then the Alpha will decide how to dispose of you." 2 enforcers rushed Jude, slamming him against drywall. He fought back, arms partially shifting to grow claws, but a silver baton cracked across his ribs. Jude went down gasping. That was all it took. Heat exploded in Rowan's chest. She didn't care about confined space, didn't care about collateral damage. She let her wolf out. The transformation was instantaneous. A violent explosion of silver and shadow that shattered the flimsy bedside table and cracked ceiling plaster. Rowan's massive form filled the small motel room, shoulders scraping ceiling. She roared. The sound shattered the window, sent enforcers stumbling backward with hands over ears. Beta Vaughn pulled a silver-loaded revolver from his jacket, hands shaking as he tried to aim. He didn't get the chance. Before Rowan could tear his throat out, the air pressure in the room changed. It dropped so suddenly her ears popped. A new scent flooded the destroyed motel room, overwhelming everything else. Ozone, dark espresso, winter ice, clean and sharp and utterly intoxicating. Mine, Rowan's wolf purred. The rage dissolved into something else entirely. Possessive, trembling. Submissive in a way she'd never felt before. A figure stepped through the ruined doorway. He moved with casual grace, stepping over the splintered wood as if strolling through a garden. He was taller than Kieran, broader. He radiated authority, making the Silver Hollow Alpha look like a boy playing dress-up. Tailored charcoal coat over black suit, dark hair perfectly styled despite rain, and eyes that glowed deep crimson in dim light. This wasn't just an alpha. This was something far more dangerous. Beta Vaughn Crane of Silver Hollow. The man's voice was smooth, lethal silk. You are 300 miles outside your jurisdiction, bleeding on my city's carpet, pointing a gun at a woman in a towel. Vaughn was shaking. He lowered the weapon, face going pale. Phantom Nord. We didn't mean to encroach on Obsidian Syndicate territory. We're retrieving a rogue pack member under orders of our Alpha. Phantom Nord, Rowan had heard stories. The warlord who controlled the entire Pacific Northwest. A Lycan who answered to no pack laws, who'd built an empire on the ashes of those who challenged him. Nord's crimson eyes moved past Vaughn, locking onto Rowan's massive wolf form. The moment their gazes met, the world tilted. The bond snapped into place with an audible crack in her mind. Not the weak, incomplete thing she'd felt with Kieran. This was absolute, unbreakable. It felt like two halves of a shattered star slamming back together, reforming, burning, brighter than before. Nord's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened with recognition, with possession, with absolute certainty. A rogue pack member, he repeated softly. I think you're mistaken, Crane. He took a step forward. The three enforcers dropped to their knees, forced down by crushing weight of his aura. She isn't a rogue. Nord's voice dropped an octave, vibrating with ancient power. She is my mate. And if you or your pathetic alpha ever look in her direction again, I will personally burn Silver Hollow to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. The silence in the ruined motel room was absolute. The convoy of black Escalades carved through rain-soaked highway, leaving Bellingham behind. Rowan sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Beta Vaughn Crane and his enforcers had fled without another word after Nord's declaration. Now she was being taken to Seattle by a stranger who'd claimed her as his mate, and she'd let him. Jude groaned beside her, holding bruised ribs. Nord had made a small gesture, and two men in black suits had materialized to help Jude into the vehicle. They moved with military precision, efficient and silent. The interior of the lead Escalade was all leather and dark wood. Luxury that felt obscene after the shabby motel. Nord settled across from them, his large frame filling the space with controlled power. He poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into a heavy glass, offered it to Rowan without a word. She took it. The whiskey burned down her throat, warming her from inside, cutting through bone-deep chill. You're the Obsidian Syndicate, Rowan finally said. Her voice sounded small in the enclosed space. You control the Northwest ports, the shipping lines. Every packless wolf from Vancouver to San Francisco answers to you. We prefer the term independent enterprise. Nord's lips curved in a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. And yes, we operate outside the antiquated hierarchy of forest packs. Real estate, logistics, intelligence gathering. He leaned forward slightly, which is how I know Kieran Blackwood made a very expensive mistake last night. Rowan's hand tightened on the glass. He rejected me because I couldn't shift, because he needed strength and he rejected you because he's bankrupt. Nord's voice was flat, brutal. Silver Hollow Pack is in financial collapse, Rowan. Has been for years. The words didn't make sense. The gala had been lavish. Crystal chandeliers, expensive wine, hundreds of guests. That's impossible. The ceremony, all those people, a facade. Nord pulled a sleek tablet from the seat pocket beside him, slid it across the console. His father invested PAC funds in commercial real estate 6 years ago. The market crashed. The building sat empty. The loans came due. A shell company called Apex Holdings bought up the debt. They've been foreclosing on Silver Hollow's ancestral lands. Rowan's fingers trembled as she took the tablet. The screen displayed bank statements, wire transfers, legal documents. Numbers that made her head spin. Millions of dollars highlighted in red. Jude leaned over, eyes widening. $8.7 million. Kieran was going to lose everything, Nord said. His voice was clinical, detached. The pack house training grounds, sacred moon circle, everything his family protected for 300 years. So when Beta Von Crane offered him a way out, he took it. Rowan's stomach turned. What way out? Nord's crimson eyes locked onto hers. Von Crane had access to money, a lot of it. He offered to pay off Silver Hollow's debt in exchange for one thing, making his daughter Luna. But where would Vaughn get $12 million, Jude asked. That, Nord said quietly, is the interesting question. And it's connected to something else. Something that happened 11 years ago. He paused, watching Rowan's face. Your parents, Rowan. They didn't die in a border skirmish. The world tilted sideways. What? Nord's jaw tightened. Your parents were Lycan peacekeepers, elite enforcers who traveled between territories investigating corruption. 11 years ago, they were looking into financial irregularities in Silver Hollow. They discovered something dangerous enough that someone wanted them silenced. He let the weight of his words settle. I've been tracking your bloodline for 3 years, since the night Kieran's bond sparked with you. I knew what you were before you did. I've been waiting for you to awaken. Why? The question came out harsh, accusatory. Why would you care about some packless girl you'd never met? For the first time, Nord's control slipped. Something raw and ancient flickered across his face. Because I know what it's like to be betrayed by someone who should have protected you. I know what it's like to destroy when everything in you wants to burn the world down. He looked away, staring out the tinted window. I built a syndicate after my own pack destroyed me. Spent 20 years creating power they couldn't touch. I swore I'd never let another Lycan be destroyed by politics and corruption. The vulnerability in his voice was startling. This man who commanded armies, controlled billions, made beta wolves flee with a single look, had once been broken too. The mate bond, Rowan said slowly. Is that real? Or is this another transaction? Nord's eyes snapped back to hers. The crimson depths were burning with something fierce and possessive. The bond is real. I felt it the moment I saw you. But I'm not claiming you, Rowan. I'm offering you a choice. He leaned forward. Come with me to Seattle. Learn what you are. Decide what you want to do with the power you've awakened. And when you're ready, we'll deal with the people who hurt you. But the choice of how is yours. And if I choose to walk away from you, then I'll give you resources and protection and let you go. His voice was absolutely sincere. I won't force a bond. I've seen what that does to people. Rowan studied him for a long moment. Every instinct screamed this was dangerous. But something in the way Nord looked at her, the careful respect despite the obvious pull of the mate bond, made her believe him. Okay, she whispered. Show me. The syndicate headquarters in Seattle was nothing like rustic pack houses. It was a gleaming 40-story tower of steel and glass in downtown's heart, with views of Puget Sound stretching to Olympic Mountains. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors. Rowan stood on the sweeping glass balcony wrapped in clothes Nord's people had provided. Dark jeans and a soft cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe back home. The city sprawled below, lights glittering like scattered diamonds against dark water. Jude was inside, being examined by syndicate medics who'd taped his ribs and given him painkillers. Rowan had spent hours in a conference room looking at files Nord's people had compiled. Financial documents, investigation reports, photographs, but not the full story, not yet. You're wondering why I haven't shown you everything, Nord said, stepping onto the balcony. He'd changed into dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. He handed her a mug, tea, chamomile and honey. You said my parents were investigating corruption. You said Vaughn had money, but you haven't told me how those things connect. Because I need you to decide something first. Nord stared out at the city. What do you want, Rowan? Quick revenge or lasting justice? She didn't answer immediately. Her wolf was pacing restless, wanting blood. I spent 5 years planning how I'd destroy the pack that betrayed me, Nord continued. Built this empire specifically to have the power to crush them. And when I finally could, when I had everything in place, I realized something. What? That revenge wouldn't give me back what I'd lost. It would just create more orphans, more broken wolves, more people like us. He turned to look at her crimson eyes reflecting city lights. So I chose a different path. I offered them accountability, a chance to rebuild under new leadership, to reform their corruption. And they accepted, reluctantly at first, but over time they became one of our strongest allied packs, because I gave them something more valuable than destruction. I gave them a chance to become better. Rowan stared into her tea. You're saying I should forgive Kieran. I'm saying you should decide what you want your legacy to be. Nord moved closer. Do you want to be remembered as the Lycan who destroyed Silver Hollow in fury, or the queen who transformed the system that allowed your betrayal? The word queen echoed in her mind. She'd spent 21 years as the lowest of the low. Now this powerful man was telling her she could be a queen. I don't know how to be that, she admitted quietly. Neither did I when I started. Nord's hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness. The mate bond flared at contact warmth spreading through her chest. Not the painful one-sided ache she'd felt with Kieran. This was mutual balanced. I won't claim you until you're ready, he said quietly. Won't pressure you into a bond you didn't choose. But I want you to know that I see you, Rowan Ashford. Not your wolf, not your bloodline. I see the woman who survived betrayal. The strength that chose survival over surrender. And I see the queen you're becoming. Rowan's breath caught. I'm not a queen. Not yet. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But you will be. And when that day comes, I'll be honored to stand beside you. For the first time since the rejection, Rowan let herself lean into someone's touch. Let herself accept comfort instead of hiding behind walls. Nord wrapped his arms around her, and she pressed her face against his chest, breathing in that scent of ozone and winter ice that her wolf recognized as home. Before Rowan could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against better judgment, she answered. Rowan Ashford, male voice, young, terrified. Who is this? My name is Thomas Reed. I'm an Omega in Silver Hollow Pack. I'm calling because there's a little girl here. She's 9 years old. Her name is Lily. She can't shift, and the pack is going to exile her tomorrow morning. They're blaming her for the wards being down, saying she's cursed like you were. Rowan's blood went cold. What? Since you left, AlphaKing's been trying to restore order, but the pack's falling apart. Rogues crossed the borders 3 times this week. 2 people died. Kieran's looking for someone to blame, and Lily's an easy target. Her parents died last year. She has no one. The phone trembled in Rowan's hand. Where is she now? Locked in one of the storage buildings. They're not feeding her, not giving her water. Rowan, she's just a kid. She didn't do anything. She's just like you were. The line went dead. Rowan stood, frozen phone still pressed to her ear. She could see it so clearly. A 9-year-old girl alone and terrified, locked in darkness, waiting to be cast out. She had been that girl once. What is it? Nord's voice was sharp with concern. Rowan told him. With every word, she felt her wolf rising again, not in fury but in purpose. They're going to exile a child. Blame her for what Kieran did. The sins of the father, Nord murmured. When an alpha loses the goddess's favor, he'll sacrifice anyone to maintain power. I have to go back. Not yet. Nord's hand caught her arm, gentle but firm. If you go back now in rage, you'll do exactly what Kieran expects. You'll attack, he'll call it rogue violence, unite the pack against a common enemy. You'll save the girl, but lose any chance of real change. So I let her suffer. We save her the right way. We extract her tonight, bring her here where she's safe. Then we force Kieran to face his crimes in front of witnesses who can't be silenced. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to shift and run south and tear down the storage building. But Nord was right. Strategy would save Lily, not rage. How? Nord pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I have people in Silver Hollow, Omegas and Deltas feeding me information for years. They can extract one small girl without alerting guards. He looked up. But after we have her safe, you need to decide what comes next. What do you mean? Kieran requested an emergency parley with the syndicate. He's begging for military support against rogue attacks. He thinks he's meeting me to negotiate aid. He doesn't know you're here. Doesn't know you're my mate. Nord's crimson eyes gleamed. We can use that. Bring him to neutral ground. Confront him with truth in front of Silver Hollow Elders Pack Council witnesses. Force accountability he can't escape. When there have been 2 weeks, midnight at Tacoma Shipping Yard. Neutral ground, isolated enough that violence won't spill into human areas, public enough that he can't make you disappear. Nord stepped closer. But Rowan, you need to understand what you're walking into. Kieran will have guards, allies, people who benefit from the current system. You'll be facing in the entire power structure of Silver Hollow. Good, Rowan said. Her voice was cold hard, nothing like the girl who'd stood trembling in a midnight blue dress. Let them all see what they rejected. Over the next 2 weeks, the syndicate became Rowan's war room and sanctuary. Nord's people extracted Lily Reed in the dead of night, slipping the small girl out before Kieran knew she was gone. When they brought her to the penthouse, Rowan's heart broke. Lily was tiny, malnourished, with matted dark hair and enormous brown eyes that had seen too much fear. She flinched when anyone moved quickly. Didn't speak for the first 6 hours. Just sat curled in a corner, watching everyone with the wary gaze of prey. Rowan sat with her, didn't force conversation. Just stayed close until Lily finally whispered, "Are you the monster they talk about?" "I'm the girl who couldn't shift," Rowan said softly. "Just like you." "But you can shift now. I saw the videos. Everyone's phone had them. You were huge." "I was angry and scared, and I'd been hurt very badly." Rowan met those huge brown eyes. "But I'm not a monster, Lily. I'm just someone who finally found strength to fight back." "Will I be able to fight back someday?" The question was so small, so fragile. Rowan felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know when your wolf will come. Maybe tomorrow, maybe years from now, maybe never. But I promise you this, your worth isn't determined by when you shift. You are valuable exactly as you are, and no one will ever hurt you for being yourself again." Lily stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she uncurled and moved closer. Didn't quite touch Rowan, but sat near enough that Rowan could feel the small girl's warmth. "Can I stay here?" Lily whispered. "As long as you want." That night, Rowan found Nord in his office, surrounded by maps and tactical reports. He looked up when she entered. "The parley in Tacoma," Rowan said. "What happens after, assuming we expose the corruption and hold Kieran accountable? What happens to Silver Hollow?" Nord leaned back. "That depends on you." "On me. Your firstborn lichen, royal blood. The moment you released your aura in that pack hall, you claimed dominance over every wolf present. Technically, you have more right to lead Silver Hollow than Kieran ever did." Rowan's stomach churned. "I don't want to be alpha of the pack that rejected me." "Then don't be. Restructure it. Install new leadership. Create a council system preventing any single alpha from wielding absolute power. Or walk away entirely." Nord stood, moving to stand before her. "But understand this. What you do in Tacoma will echo through every pack in the Northwest. You're not just confronting Kieran. You're setting a precedent. You have a chance to change the entire system. And if I fail, then I'll burn Silver Hollow to ash and we'll start over." Nord's voice was sincere. "But you won't fail because you're not fighting alone anymore." He reached out, cupping her face. "I see the woman who sat with a traumatized child for 6 hours because she remembered being that child. I see the strength that chose strategy over rage. And I see the queen you're becoming." Rowan's breath caught. For the first time, she let herself believe it might be true. Nord also showed her one more thing that night. A photograph. Dahlia Crane sitting alone in a healer's chamber, her neck wrapped in bandages covering the black scar where Kieran's cursed mark had burned her. "She's been in isolation since that night," Nord said quietly, "refusing to see her father. The shaman says she's in shock. The goddess's curse didn't just burn her skin, it showed her the truth of what she'd become part of." Rowan stared at the photo, Dahlia's hollow eyes, not the triumphant Luna anymore, just another victim. "She didn't know," Nord continued. "That doesn't excuse her cruelty to you, but it explains why she's not fighting the truth now. She's as much a pawn as you were, just in a different way." Rowan tucked that knowledge away. It didn't change what Dahlia had done, but it added context she'd need for what came next. The night before the parley, Rowan couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony watching storm clouds gather over water. Tomorrow she would face Kieran. Tomorrow she would stand before the pack that cast her aside. Tomorrow she would decide what kind of leader she wanted to be. Jude found her there, ribs finally healed. He'd spent days coordinating with Nord's security team, learning the Tacoma yard layout, planning extraction routes. "You ready, Emma?" he asked. "I don't know." Rowan's hands were steady, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. "Part of me wants to rip his throat out, make him feel the pain he caused. But then I think about Lily, about all the other wolves hurt by this system, and I realize killing Kieran doesn't fix anything." "So what's the plan?" Rowan took a deep breath. "Expose the truth, all of it. Force the elders to acknowledge what happened. Strip Kieran of enough power that he can't hurt anyone else, but leave him alive to face consequences." "That's mercy," Jude said carefully. "After what he did, mercy is more than he deserves." "Maybe." Rowan's eyes glowed violet in darkness. "But I don't want to become like him. Don't want to let pain turn me into someone who destroys lives for satisfaction. Nord showed me there's another way. Harder maybe, but one that actually creates change." Jude smiled that familiar crooked grin. "You know what, I think you're going to make a terrifying queen." "I'm not." You are, whether you claim the title or not. He bumped her shoulder. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're choosing wisdom over wrath. The world has enough angry alphas. It needs more leaders who give a damn. Inside the penthouse, Lily slept peacefully for the first time since her rescue. Nord reviewed final security arrangements. 50 elite enforcers would accompany them to Tacoma. Not to fight, Nord emphasized, but to ensure Silver Hollow couldn't use violence to avoid accountability. Rowan watched storm clouds roll in, felt her wolf settle into focused calm. Tomorrow would be the hardest thing she'd ever done. Harder than surviving rejection. Harder than awakening alone and broken. Tomorrow she'd have to be strong enough to show mercy to the man who destroyed her. Strong enough to demand justice without becoming the monster they'd accused her of being. But she wasn't alone. She had Jude's loyalty, Nord's partnership, Lily's trust. She had power she was just beginning to understand, and a purpose beyond personal pain. The rain started to fall, cold and cleansing. Rowan lifted her face to the sky. When she opened her eyes, they blazed amethyst in darkness. Tomorrow, Kieran Blackwood would answer for his sins, not to the broken girl he'd rejected, but to the lichen queen he'd created. The Tacoma shipping yard was a graveyard of rust and forgotten commerce. Rows of corroded steel containers stretched across cracked concrete paint, peeling in long strips. Wind coming off Commencement Bay was brutal, carrying sharp bite of salt and industrial decay. Sodium lights buzzed and flickered overhead, casting everything in sickly orange. Midnight, the time when old debts came due. Rowan stepped out of the lead Escalade boots, crunching on gravel, scattered with broken glass. She'd dressed for war, black tactical pants, fitted turtleneck, heavy leather jacket Nord had given her. Hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. No makeup, no softness, just hard edges of a woman who'd died and been reborn in fire. Nord emerged beside her, silent shadow in his charcoal coat. Behind them, 50 syndicate enforcers fanned out with military precision, securing the perimeter. These weren't sloppy pack guards. These were professionals who'd survived battles that would have broken lesser predators. Jude walked at Rowan's left flank, gripping a silver-laced baton. His expression was grim. In the back of the third Escalade, small hands pressed against tinted window. Lily. Rowan had told her to stay in Seattle, but the girl had begged to come. I need to see they can't hurt us anymore, she'd whispered. Nord allowed it, but only with strict instructions. She remained in the vehicle with armed guards. Wind howled through shipping containers, creating an eerie chorus of metallic groans. Rowan's wolf paced beneath her skin, eager for confrontation, but held in check by iron will. Tonight wasn't about satisfying rage. Tonight was about something far more important. A portable halogen work light had been set up in the yard's center, creating a circle of harsh white illumination against darkness. Standing in that circle, looking nothing like the confident alpha who'd rejected her 2 weeks ago, was Kieran Blackwood. He was a wreck, suit rumpled, hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, hair disheveled. Hands trembled slightly as he tried to project authority he no longer possessed. Steel gray eyes that once commanded rooms now darted nervously between Nord's approaching forces. Behind him stood 12 Silver Hollow elders, including Elder Harrison, gray-haired man who'd served 3 generations of alphas. They looked uncomfortable in this urban wasteland, out of their element, frightened. And there, clutching a fur coat around her shoulders, was Dahlia Crane. Even in harsh light, she was beautiful, but her face was marked now. A black scar twisted across her neck where Kieran's cursed mating mark had burned into flesh. She avoided looking at Rowan, eyes fixed on ground. Beta Von Crane stood slightly apart, expensive suit, unable to hide predatory tension in his frame. His eyes tracked Nord's approach with the wariness of a man who knew he was outmatched but wasn't ready to surrender. As syndicate forces formed a semicircle around the lit area, Kieran stepped forward. He straightened his shoulders, trying to resurrect some semblance of the alpha he'd been. When he spoke, his voice carried across the yard, though lacking former thunder. Phantom Nord, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Silver Hollow Pack is prepared to offer you exclusive shipping rights through our southern logging roads in exchange for military support. Our borders are under siege. We need... His voice died in his throat. His eyes had found Rowan stepping out of shadows into the pool of light. For a moment, Kieran's brain seemed unable to process what he was seeing. Shock, recognition, disbelief, terror flashed across his face in rapid succession. All color drained from his skin until he looked like a corpse. Dahlia gasped, one hand flying to her scarred neck. The elders erupted in hushed whispers, eyes widening as they recognized the violent hum of power radiating from Rowan. Rowan, Kieran choked out. He looked from her to Nord, mind struggling to connect pieces. What are you? Why is she here? What is this? Careful with your words, Blackwood. Nord's voice was silk over steel, carrying effortlessly through night. You are addressing my mate, and the true sovereign of this territory. Kieran flinched as if struck. Your mate, no. That's impossible. She's wolfless. She's nothing. She is firstborn lichen. Elder Harrison's voice cut through Kieran's denial. The old man stepped forward, weathered face grave. Look at her eyes, Alpha. We felt the wars shatter the moment you rejected her. You expelled royal blood. You cursed us all. Shut up! Kieran's roar was desperate, unstable. His eyes flashed gold as his wolf surged close to surface. He turned back to Nord, ignoring Rowan entirely. This is a trick. You're harboring a fugitive who assaulted my pack. I demand you hand her over under Treaty of Northwest Councils. Rowan let out a low laugh. The sound was cold, entirely devoid of warmth. It echoed off steel shipping containers like the toll of a funeral bell. She stepped forward, leaving Nord's side, walking directly into Kieran's personal space. The oppressive weight of her Lycan aura slammed into him like a physical wall. His knees buckled slightly. The elders behind him took involuntary steps backward. There are no councils here, Kieran, Rowan said. Her voice was eerily calm, each word measured and precise. There is only reality. And the reality is you made choices. Tonight you answer for them. Kieran's jaw went slack. The elders froze. Rowan pulled a thick folder from inside her jacket and threw it at the elders' feet. Documents scattered across wet concrete. You're Alpha, she said, raising her voice to ensure every wolf in the yard could hear, bankrupted Silver Hollow by investing pack funds in failed commercial real estate. He was going to lose the ancestral lands to foreclosure. The pack house, sacred grounds, everything your family's protected for 300 years. All of it mortgaged to cover his father's mistakes. Elder Harrison picked up the nearest document, hands shaking. Even in harsh light, Rowan could see his face drain of color as he scanned bank statements. Wire transfers, the deed to the pack house held in escrow. A deep collective growl began to rumble through assembled elders. It started low and built the sound of betrayal turning to fury. They turned their gazes toward Kieran. Kieran, Harrison's voice shook with rage. Is this true? You mortgaged our forest. Kieran's mouth opened and closed. He looked trapped, cornered. His eyes darted to Vaughn Crane, seeking support, but Vaughn was already backing away slowly. I had to save the pack, Kieran finally said. Words came out defensive, almost pleading. My father made mistakes, but I couldn't let centuries of heritage be destroyed. So you sold me? Rowan interrupted, her voice rising with controlled fury. Beta Vaughn Crane offered you money to pay off the debt. In exchange, you made his daughter your Luna. It wasn't about the goddess. It wasn't about me being weak. I was a transaction, a corporate merger to save your inheritance. She stepped closer, amethyst eyes blazing. But that's not even the worst of it. Rowan turned to face Vaughn Crane directly. The beta had gone very still expression, calculating, already looking for escape routes. 11 years ago, Rowan said, her voice dropping to deadly quiet, my parents discovered evidence of corruption in Silver Hollow. They were investigating the real estate deals, the outside manipulation, the shell companies. They were going to expose everything. She paused, letting silence stretch. So Beta Vaughn Crane hired 3 rogue assassins and paid them to murder my mother and father. He staged it as a border skirmish. I was 10 years old. The words fell into the yard like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock spreading through gathered wolves. Dahlia's head snapped up. She stared at her father, scarred face going white. What no? Daddy, tell her that's a lie. It's all documented, Nord said, his voice cutting through Dahlia's denial. He produced his tablet, swiping through files. Witness statements that were suppressed, autopsy reports showing injuries inconsistent with rogue attacks, bank transfers to 3 mercenary wolves who disappeared after the incident, and a confession from one of those mercenaries currently in syndicate custody who will testify that Vaughn Crane paid him to eliminate 2 Lycan peacekeepers. Corporate embezzlement, Nord continued. $12 million stolen from a Bellevue tech firm. That's where the money came from to pay Kieran's debts. Federal crimes, murder for hire, all to secure your daughter's position. Vaughn Crane's face twisted with rage and fear. You have no authority. This is pack business. Murder is never just pack business, Nord cut him off. I've already forwarded all evidence to the FBI. They're very interested in talking to you. Dahlia was shaking her head, backing away from her father. You killed them. You killed Rowan's parents and you never told me. You made me part of this. I did it for you, Vaughn roared. For our family. For your future. Those Lycans were going to destroy everything I'd built. You built nothing but lies. Dahlia screamed, Tears streamed down her face, mixing with rain that had started to fall. I thought Kieran chose me because I was strong, because I was worthy, but it was all a transaction. You bought me a title with blood money and murder. She turned to Rowan, voice breaking. I didn't know. I swear on the goddess, I didn't know what my father did. I thought the mating bond was real. I thought Kieran wanted me. For the first time since arriving, Rowan saw genuine remorse in Dahlia's eyes. The cruel, ambitious girl who'd mocked her was gone. In her place was a young woman who'd just discovered her entire life was built on murder and corruption. I rescind my Luna claim, Dahlia said loud enough for all to hear. I want no part of this, no part of what my father did. She turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of shipping containers, her sobs echoing off steel. The betrayal shattered whatever remained of Kieran's composure. He stood in the center of light, abandoned by his chosen Luna, exposed before his elders, facing the truth he'd tried to bury. Something in him snapped. With a horrifying, guttural roar, he let his wolf take over. He half-shifted, face contorting into a monstrous lupine mask, hands becoming claws, spine curving, as partial fur erupted across skin. If I kill you, the bond is erased, he screamed, voice barely human, distorted by partial shift. If you're dead, the curse is broken. He lunged directly at Rowan, jaws snapping toward her throat. Nord didn't move to intercept, neither did Jude. They understood this was Rowan's fight, her choice, her moment. Rowan didn't flinch. She let the transformation take her. Instantaneous, explosive. 1 second she was a woman in tactical gear. The next, a massive silver-black wolf stood in her place, so large that Kieran's half-shifted form looked like a child's toy beside her. Kieran slammed into her with all his strength. It was like a sparrow attacking an oak tree. Rowan didn't even move. She stood like a mountain, immovable, while Kieran bounced off and stumbled backward. Before he could recover, Rowan struck. One massive paw swatted him out of the air, the blow calculated for impact. Kieran flew 20 feet, crashing into a shipping container with enough force to dent corrugated steel. He slumped to ground, coughing blood, but tried to force himself up, eyes wide with manic desperation. Enough, Rowan's wolf commanded in her mind. She stalked forward, each step, deliberate concrete cracking beneath her immense weight. She placed one massive paw flat against Kieran's chest, pinning him to wet ground. He thrashed wildly, but he might as well have been fighting gravity. Rowan lowered her enormous head until her snout was inches from his face. She could kill him now. One bite, one flex of her claws in his throat would be gone. It would be so easy, so satisfying. Do it. Kieran's voice was broken, defeated. Just do it. I deserve it. In the crowd of witnesses, Rowan heard 3 voices. You're not a killer. Jude's voice was quiet but firm. You're better than him. He deserves death for what he's done. Nord's voice held no judgment, only acknowledgement of her right to choose. The decision is yours. Mercy, Luna. Elder Harrison's voice trembled. Please, show us there's another way. And from the escalade, barely audible, a small voice. Don't be like them. Lily, the 9-year-old girl who'd suffered because of men like Kieran, who'd been locked in darkness and left to starve because an alpha needed someone to blame. Rowan stared into Kieran's terrified eyes. She saw the boy he'd been, her childhood friend. She saw the man he'd become, shaped by pressure and pride. She saw the coward who'd chosen comfort over courage. And she made her choice. She didn't kill him. Instead, she opened her jaws and unleashed the alpha roar. It wasn't a physical sound. It was a frequency resonating directly into bone and spirit, a devastating magical pulse only lichens could produce. The ancient rite of firstborn bloodlines. The rite of severance, or common. Rowan pushed her aura into Kieran's chest, found the glowing core of his alpha power, the golden spark connecting him to Silver Hollow. And with surgical precision, she crushed 70% of it. Kieran's scream was soul-shattering. The sound of spiritual amputation of power being torn away. The golden light in his eyes flared violently, then dimmed to a weak, barely visible glow. His muscles shrank. His partial shift receded involuntarily, leaving him human and pathetically small. When Rowan stepped back and let her own shift recede, Kieran lay on the ground weeping. He wasn't the alpha anymore. He was barely an enforcer. She'd left him just enough power to contribute, but stripped him of authority to command. You wanted me to live as you made me live, Rowan said, standing over him in human form. Her voice was steady, final. Powerless, humiliated, clawing for respect you'll never fully regain. So that's your sentence. You'll spend the rest of your life earning back what you threw away. Maybe in 30 years, if you serve your pack with genuine humility, the goddess will restore what I took. She turned to face the elders. Silver Hollow Pack will be restructured. Elder Harrison, you'll lead a council, true shared leadership. Kieran will work as a border enforcer, the lowest rank. He'll protect the territory he nearly sold. He'll serve the people he betrayed, and every day he'll remember what he chose over his destined mate. Harrison fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to wet concrete. Luna, Alpha, we accept your judgment. We will rebuild according to your wisdom. Rowan looked at the dozen elders, at syndicate witnesses at Nord standing patient and proud. I'm not your Luna. I'm not your Alpha. Silver Hollow isn't my home anymore. But you'll operate under syndicate oversight. Your finances will be transparent, your leadership accountable. And if I ever hear of another child being exiled for failing to shift, I'll come back and finish what I started tonight. She turned to where Beta Von Crane stood trembling. Two syndicate enforcers had moved to flank him, cutting off escape routes. As for you, Rowan said, her amethyst eyes burning into him. You don't get pack justice. You get human justice. You murdered my parents. You embezzled millions. Those are federal crimes. The FBI will be waiting in Seattle. You can't do this, Vaughn snarled. I'm pack. You stopped being pack the moment you hired humans to murder lichens, Nord interrupted, voice like ice. Syndicate enforcers will escort you to federal custody. You'll stand trial, and when you're convicted, you'll spend the rest of your life in a cage knowing your daughter wants nothing to do with you. Vaughn tried to fight as enforcers grabbed him, but he was outnumbered. They dragged him toward a waiting vehicle, his screams fading into rainy night. Kieran was still on the ground, broken and sobbing. Harrison and the other elders approached him carefully, expressions mixing pity and disgust. They would take him back to Silver Hollow. They would begin the long work of rebuilding. Rowan walked away from them. She didn't run, didn't rush. She walked with her head high, shoulders back, every inch the Queen Nord had told her she could become. Nord fell into step beside her. He didn't touch her, didn't claim her, just walked as an equal. When they reached the Escalade where Lily waited, Rowan opened the door. The little girl looked up with huge eyes. Is it over? It's over, Rowan said softly. No one can hurt you now. Lily launched herself forward, wrapping thin arms around Rowan's waist. And for the first time since her transformation, Rowan let herself cry. Not from pain this time, but from relief. From the weight of justice delivered, from knowing she'd chosen the harder path and survived it. Nord placed his coat around both of them, sheltering them from rain. Ready to go home, my queen. Rowan looked back one last time at the shipping yard, at the pack that had rejected her, at the man who'd thrown away everything for money. Then she looked forward, toward the lights of Seattle, toward the future she would build. Take me home. 5 months later, spring had transformed Seattle into a city of blooming cherry trees and crystalline rain. Rowan stood in the training center on the 15th floor of the Syndicate Tower, watching a class of young wolves practice shifting techniques. 15 students ages 9 to 17. Half were late bloomers like she'd been. The other half were packless refugees expelled from territories for being different, for being weak, for failing to meet someone else's expectations. Lily was among them, still wolfless, but learning combat techniques, strategy, pack law. She'd grown in 5 months, put on weight, started smiling more. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. Rowan was 7 months pregnant now, her belly round beneath the flowing tunic she wore. Nord's child, a lichen heir who would inherit both their bloodlines, their power, their commitment to changing the broken system they'd survived. They'd married 3 months ago in a simple ceremony on the Syndicate Tower roof, with Jude as Nord's best man and Lily as Rowan's flower girl. No pack politics, no negotiations, just two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of betrayal and chosen to build something new. The Lichen Accords had been established 2 months after the Tacoma confrontation, a governing body bridging traditional pack structures with modern accountability. Representatives from 12 territories across the Pacific Northwest met monthly to address corruption, mediate disputes, protect vulnerable pack members. It was slow work, frustrating work. Many alphas resisted changes, clinging to old ways of absolute power. But others, seeing what happened to Kieran, were willing to listen. Silver Hollow had stabilized under Elder Harrison's council leadership. They'd paid their debts honestly through timber contracts and careful financial management. The pack was smaller. Some members had left, unable to accept new structure. But those who remained were building something more sustainable. And Kieran himself, he worked the borders as Rowan had commanded. 12-hour shifts patrolling territory lines, protecting refugees, warning off rogues. He'd saved 3 lives in the last month alone, throwing himself into service as if it could somehow atone. He would never be Alpha again. His wolf was too diminished, his authority too shattered. But Elder Harrison reported he was learning humility, learning what leadership actually meant when stripped of ego and power. Nord entered the training room, moving through practicing students with easy grace. He'd been in meetings all morning, but his eyes immediately found Rowan. He placed a gentle hand on her swollen belly, feeling their child kick against his palm. "How are my girls today?" "Restless," Rowan admitted, "but strong, like her mother." The class ended. Students bowed respectfully before filing out, chattering among themselves. Lily lingered as she always did. "Will you tell us the story again?" the girl asked. "About choosing not to kill him." Rowan settled into a chair. She'd learned these young wolves needed to hear the truth, needed to know rejection wasn't the end, that pain could be transformed into purpose. "That's the hardest part," Rowan said, "because revenge would have felt so good in that moment, making him pay for every tear I cried. My wolf wanted his throat, wanted to make him suffer. But you didn't." "No, because I realized something important. If I'd killed Kieran, I would have become the monster they accused me of being. I would have proved power without wisdom is just destruction. And I would have robbed him of the chance to become better." Lily considered this carefully. "Do you think he's become better?" "I think he's trying, and that's all we can ask of anyone who's done wrong. Genuine effort to change. Consistent action over time." Rowan placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "But the real question isn't whether he's better. It's whether we're building a world where people like him can't destroy people like us anymore. Are we building that world?" Rowan looked around the training center, at equipment purchased with syndicate funds, at counselors and healers on staff, at safe dormitories where packless wolves could stay, at legal advocates fighting for wolf rights. "We're trying," she said, "one student at a time, one reform pack at a time, one alpha who learns to share power. It's slow work, but it's work that matters." Lily hugged her quickly, then ran off to catch up with other students. Rowan watched her go, this child who reminded her so much of who she'd been. Lost, frightened, convinced she was broken. Nord helped her to her feet. "You're good at this, teaching, leading, showing them there's another way. I'm learning as I go. So is everyone worth following." They walked to floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. Water was choppy today, white caps dancing across the surface. Mountains rose in the distance, still capped with snow despite spring warmth. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elder Harrison. "Monthly report attached. Pack stable. 3 new families joined this week. Kieran saved a refugee child from rogues yesterday. Took an injury protecting her. He's learning. Slowly. Thank you for giving us the chance to rebuild properly." Rowan smiled. "Progress. Slow and perfect, but real." Another message, this one from Dahlia. "Passed my first level healer certification. The shaman says I have a gift for mending broken things. I hope you and the baby are well. You deserve so much better than what we gave you. I'm trying to make sure the next generation gets better." Rowan typed back a simple response. "Keep going. That's all any of us can do." Nord wrapped his arms around her from behind, sheltering her and their daughter. "You've given them something to aspire to. A model of leadership that doesn't require cruelty." They stood together, 2 lichens who'd survived the worst their world could offer and chosen to build something better from wreckage. Outside, night settled over Seattle. Somewhere in Oregon, Kieran Blackwood walked his patrol route guarding borders he'd once nearly sold. Somewhere in a federal prison, Vaughn Crane contemplated the ruin of his legacy. Somewhere in Silver Hollow, Dahlia Crane studied healing techniques trying to mend what her father had broken. And here in a tower above the city, Rowan Ashford Nord prepared to bring new life into a world she was actively transforming. A world where being different didn't mean being disposable, where late bloomers could become queens, where justice was measured not by vengeance, but by systems built to prevent future harm. She thought about that 9-year-old girl she'd been watching her parents' funeral, believing she was alone. If she could speak to that child now, she would tell her, "You will be rejected, you will be betrayed, you will be told you are worthless, and none of it will be true. You will survive, you will transform, and you will build something beautiful from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. Your worth isn't defined by when you shift or who chooses you or what power you possess. It's defined by what you build when the world says you're nothing, and you, little one, will build kingdoms." Nord's hand covered hers on the window. Their daughter kicked again as if agreeing with her mother's thoughts. Rowan turned to face him, her amethyst eyes clear and certain. "I love you," she said simply, "and I love you, my queen." They stood there as the city lights came on below two souls who'd found each other in darknesses and chosen to create light. The future was uncertain. There would be more battles, more alphas to reform, more vulnerable wolves to protect. But they would face it together. And that made all the difference.